The slap echoed through the room like a gunshot. What happened next took exactly 1.8 seconds and ended a 30-year career. The Naval Operations Center conference hall was packed with brass. That August morning, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Morgan stood by the coffee station in her dress whites, reviewing notes for her 1400 presentation on submarine tactical systems. 12 years of perfect service had earned her this moment. She'd worked twice as hard as every man in the room, just to be considered half as good. She was done apologizing for taking up space. Before we get into what went down, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing who's tuning in. Admiral Richard Hartley was already 3 whiskeys deep. Not sloppy drunk, but that smooth, entitled drunk that comes from 30 years of never hearing the word no. He spotted Jessica and smirked, like he just found something amusing. "Hey, sweetheart, you looking for the secretarial pool? That's Building C on." The room went dead quiet. Officers who'd served with Jessica, eyes who'd watched her pull Seaman Davis from freezing Alaskan waters, who'd seen her prevent a reactor meltdown that could have vaporized 100 sailors. They all froze mid-dash conversation. That Jessica turned real slow, her jaw tight. "Admiral Hartley, I'm presenting at 1400. It's on your schedule, sir." His face flushed red. In his world, women smiled and nodded. They sure as hell didn't correct admirals. In front of witnesses. What happened next was pure instinct and decades of entitlement colliding. His hand came up fast, faster than his bourbon-soaked brain could process consequences. The slap cracked across Jessica's face, hard enough to snap her head to the side and send her coffee cup clattering to the floor. For 3 seconds, the world stopped spinning. Jessica's hand touched her cheek slowly, her green eyes going cold as Arctic ice. And if you knew her story, if you knew what she'd survived at the academy, your stomach would have dropped through the floor. Because after Midshipman Bradley attacked her sophomore year, Jessica spent 2 years training in Krav Maga until her instructor said she had nothing left to teach her. She'd volunteered for every combat readiness course the Navy offered. She'd sparred with Marine raiders who outweighed her by 80 pounds. And she'd carved one promise into her soul with steel and sweat. No man puts hands on me ever again. What came next was surgical. Jessica's response wasn't rage, it was precision. Her right hand redirected his retreating arm while her left fired straight into his jaw. With every ounce of frustration from a dozen years of condescending comments, passed over promotions, and being called sweetie by men half as qualified, the impact sounded like a Louisville slugger hitting a fastball. Admiral Hartley's eyes rolled back in his skull. All 215 pounds of him collapsed like a demolished building, his head bouncing once off the polished floor before going still. Blood trickled from his split lip, pooling on the marble. His 2 bodyguards, Petty Officers Miller and Jackson, lunged forward, hands reaching for their sidearms, but they were 4 steps away, and physics had already declared a winner. By the time they reached Jessica, Hartley was out cold, his breathing shallow and ragged. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Commander Tom Patterson stepped forward, his voice cutting through the shocked silence like a blade. Admiral Hartley struck Lieutenant Commander Morgan first, unprovoked assault. I witnessed it clearly, as did everyone in this room. Around him, 23 heads nodded in unison. Not because they were friends with Jessica, not because they were crusaders for justice, but because they'd all sworn an oath to support and defend. And that oath didn't include protecting flag officers who assault junior personnel. Jessica straightened her uniform jacket, her hands steady as stone. That steadiness terrified people more than the knockout punch. "Someone call medical," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And get NCIS down here." Now, the next 72 hours were absolute chaos. Naval Criminal Investigative Service descended like hawks. They interviewed all 23 witnesses separately. Security footage from 4 different angles captured the entire incident in crystal clear 4K. The slap, the punch, the collapse, everything. The evidence was airtight, irrefutable, and devastating. And then something unexpected happened, something that changed everything. Women started coming forward, lots of them. Ensign Amanda Chen, who'd resigned from the Navy 2 years prior, sent a detailed email describing how Admiral Hartley cornered her during a port call in San Diego, his hand on her lower back, his breath hot with scotch. Ensign Katie Rodriguez filed an official complaint about the comments he made during her commissioning ceremony, comments about her body that made her physically sick. Lieutenant Junior Grade Rebecca Williams came forward about an incident in Bahrain that she'd buried for 3 years out of fear it would destroy her career. By the end of week 1, 17 women had shared their stories. By week 2, that number hit 26. The Navy faced a choice: protect one powerful admiral or protect its own integrity. Admiral Richard Hartley was quietly retired with a reduction in rank and 0 pension. The assault charges against Jessica dropped completely, and 3 months later, in a ceremony attended by over 300 officers at Naval Station Norfolk, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Morgan received the Navy and Marine Corps' Commendation Medal for exemplary conduct and composure under extreme duress. But medals don't tell the whole story. They never do. 6 months after that August morning, Jessica stood behind a podium at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. The auditorium was packed with 400 midshipmen, young men and women just starting their journeys in naval service. She'd been invited to speak about tactical decision-making and leadership under pressure. She talked about something entirely different. "I want to tell you about the hardest punch I've ever thrown," she began, her voice carrying to the back row. And it wasn't hard because of the physical act. It was hard because I knew exactly what would follow: the investigations, the scrutiny, people questioning whether I'd overreacted, whether I'd destroyed my career, whether I should have just smiled and taken it like women are supposed to. The room was absolutely silent. But here's what I learned that day, and what I need you to understand. Your silence protects the wrong people. Your compliance enables the next assault, the next victim, the next junior officer who thinks they have to endure abuse because that's just how things work. And when you finally stand up, really, truly stand up, you discover something extraordinary. She paused, her eyes scanning hundreds of young faces. You discover you were never alone. All those people who stayed quiet, who looked away, who convinced themselves it wasn't their business, they were waiting for someone to be brave first. One single act of courage gives everyone else permission to find their own. The applause started like distant thunder, then built into something that shook the walls. Today, Captain Jessica Morgan commands the USS Michael Murphy, a guided missile destroyer. At 39, she's the youngest woman in the Atlantic Fleet to hold destroyer command. Her crew of 300 sailors would follow her through a hurricane because they know she sees them not as subordinates or statistics, but as human beings deserving of dignity and respect. And Admiral Richard Hartley? He lives in a modest ranch house outside Norfolk, Virginia. His name was stripped from the leadership building that once bore it. His portraits were quietly removed from the halls he used to walk. His legacy was reduced to a cautionary tale whispered to new officers about the price of believing power grants immunity. Because here's the truth they don't teach in leadership courses. Respect isn't given by rank or position. It's earned through honor, integrity, and how you treat people when you think nobody's watching. And the moment you mistake authority for permission to harm others, you discover that justice doesn't need approval to arrive. It only needs someone brave enough to deliver it. That conference room where it happened, they renamed it the Morgan Leadership Hall. Some impacts echo forever. Some punches change everything. ... So, that's my story for today. If it moved you or made you think differently, drop a comment below about a time you witnessed real courage in an unexpected moment. Hit that subscribe button if you want more true stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And remember, your voice matters. Use it. Speak up. Be the first one brave enough to stand. I'll see you in the next one.